1944. The Allied invasion of Europe loomed. Against the formidable German war machine, conventional military might alone was deemed insufficient. A new kind of warfare was required. For decades, the narrative of World War II has largely focused on the colossal clashes of armies, the brute force of armor and artillery. But a deeper examination reveals a hidden dimension of ingenuity, a testament to the power of illusion and the art of deception. The United States Army, lacking established doctrine for tactical deception, was forced to innovate. High-level commanders, including Generals Jake Devers and Dwight D. Eisenhower, recognized that military deception could be a distinct operational capability, not merely a secondary tactic. This critical realization would birth one of the war's most unconventional units. In January of 1944, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, later known as the Ghost Army, began to take shape. Its core mission, to conduct tactical deception operations, impersonating real fighting units and creating a stage of illusion that would fundamentally impact the battlefield. The unit's ranks were filled with an extraordinary collection of artistic and creative talents, recruited directly from civilian life. Among them were future fashion designer Bill Blass, minimalist painter Ellsworth Kelly, wildlife artist Arthur Singer, and former comic strip artists Victor Dowd and Ray Haver. These unmilitary individuals, often dismissed by conventional thinking, would prove their mettle in high-stakes military functions. Under the command of Colonel Harry L. Reeder, an old-school infantry officer who adapted remarkably to his unique role, and the operational brilliance of Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Simonson, the Ghost Army developed an unparalleled arsenal of trickery. This wasn't mere ad hoc battlefield camouflage. It was a sophisticated, multimedia operational art form. At the heart of their visual deception were battalions of inflatable rubber dummies. M4 Sherman tanks, weighing a mere 93 pounds when fully inflated, stood in stark contrast to the 32-ton war machines they represented. These marvels of engineering, produced with urgent precision at USAS Rubber's Woonsocket plant, embodied the shift from brute force to ingenious wile. The unit's signal company Special mastered the art of spoof radio. Knowing that 75% of German intelligence was gathered from radio intercepts, Ghost Army telegraphers like Sergeant Stanley Nance mimicked the individual fists, the unique Morse code styles of real radio operators. They duplicated call signs, message frequency, and types of transmissions for specific units, creating a phantom network of communication that convinced the enemy real divisions were on the move. For sonic deception, the 3132 Signal Service Company Special, led by the charismatic Colonel Hilton Howell Rayleigh, employed a world-class collection of sound effects records. Powerful 500-pound speakers, mounted on half-tracks, projected the sounds of motor convoys, bridge building, and tank movements over distances up to 7,000 yards. Pioneering scientists like Leo Beranek, collaborating with Bell Labs, developed multi-track recording techniques and even devised solutions to the Doppler effect, capturing the rumbling of real tanks from Fort Knox to create utterly convincing auditory illusions. Beyond the technical wizardry, the Ghost Army practiced special effects deception. Soldiers became actors, impersonating officers of various ranks and spreading carefully fabricated rumors in local villages. They wore the insignia of other units, fabricated vehicle markings, and moved with the precise mannerisms of the divisions they were mimicking. As Lieutenant Fred Fox, a key proponent of this atmosphere deception, noted in a critical memo, "There is too much military and not enough showmanship." By late May and early June of 1944, as Operation Fortitude, the vast D-Day deception, was in full swing, the Ghost Army conducted its own practice deceptions in England's Thetford Manoeuvre area. Then, on June 5th, the drone of airplanes filled the sky, a prelude to D-Day. On June 6, 1944, over 150,000 Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy. Just days later, the Ghost Army made its combat debut. A 15-man platoon, codenamed Task Force Mason, landed on Omaha Beach. Led by Lieutenant Bernie Mason, and including artists like Sergeant Victor Dowd, they were immediately thrust into the brutal reality of war. Sergeant Dowd, recalling the jarring transition from quiet England to the carnage of Normandy, vividly sketched scenes of impaled cows and shattered landscapes, capturing the grim aftermath of the invasion. Task Force Mason was assigned to draw fire for the 1980th Artillery near St. Mary Glees, deploying heavy, cumbersome dummy 155 mm howitzers and improvised flash canisters to simulate muzzle flashes. They attracted 20 to 25 rounds of enemy fire over 3 nights. Despite being shelled, the Ghost Army suffered no casualties, a testament to their success in diverting enemy attention. Their 28 days following the 980th proved the immediate life-saving impact of their audacious fakery. As the Allied breakout from Normandy progressed, the Ghost Army's capabilities were increasingly recognized. In August of 1944, Captain Ralph Ingersoll met with the famously aggressive General George Patton. Patton, known for his focus on direct combat, showed a surprising appreciation for deception. Though gruff, he famously remarked, "The general says to tell Ingersoll that his Boy Scouts would have learned more of what a real war is like if they had been shot at," a backhanded acknowledgement of their unique role. One of their first major multimedia deceptions was Operation Brittany in August 1944. Tasked with supporting Patton's race east to encircle German forces, the Ghost Army deployed into 4 task forces, impersonating elements of 4 real divisions. Over 70 inflatable dummy tanks, a powerful radio network generating false communications, and meticulous officer impersonations created the illusion of a strong westward movement, diverting German attention and helping facilitate the encirclement of the German 7th Army in the Falaise pocket. This crucial victory resulted in 10,000 Germans killed and 50,000 captured. Later that month, the Ghost Army faced its first major test of simultaneous visual sonic and radio deception at Operation Brest. Their mission, to simulate the 6th Armored Division and bluff German General Hermann Bernhard Ramke into surrendering the fortified port, dummy tanks, sonic trucks operating within 500 yards of German lines, and phantom artillery pieces drew significant enemy fire. German intelligence, misled by the illusion, shifted 20 to 50 88mm anti-tank guns to counter the perceived armored threat. However, the Brest operation also highlighted the inherent dangers of deception. On August 25, 1944, a tragic friendly fire incident occurred. A company of real American light tanks, unaware of the Ghost Army's simulated tank battalion, moved into the deception area, drawing devastating German fire. Corporal John Jarvie expressed profound remorse, haunted by the belief that the lost tank crews expected support from the heavy tanks of the 6th Armored Division. It was a stark lesson on the critical importance of coordination and the deadly consequences when deception went tragically wrong. Amidst the intensity of combat, the soldiers found moments of levity. After the liberation of Paris on August 25, the unit bivouacked near Sens. There, they stumbled upon the legendary Cognac Hill, a massive cache of 520 cases of French cognac, wine and spirits. The liberation and subsequent distribution of over 6,000 bottles became a surprising, and likely stress-relieving, chapter in their wartime experience. By mid-September 1944, a critical and dangerous 70-mile gap opened in the northern front as Patton's Third Army attacked Metz. The Ghost Army was tasked with plugging this vulnerability in Operation Bettembourg. This was to be the unit's longest and most risky deception. For 4 straight nights, their sonic trucks operated continuously, supported by radio deception and painstaking visual setups. Sergeant Bob Tompkins' diary entries capture the tense atmosphere and his mounting anxiety. The operation was a resounding success, convincing the Germans that a strong division held the line, when in reality the sector was thinly held by Colonel James Polk's 3rd Cavalry Group. Operation Bettembourg was a turning point, proving the Ghost Army's capability for sustained professional deception. As winter descended in late 1944, the Ghost Army was stationed in Luxembourg. Here, they established the Blarney Theatre, where Sergeant Spike Berry projected countless feet of film for the troops. In a moment of extraordinary human connection, Marlene Dietrich performed for the soldiers, a risk she took out of decency, even attracting the likes of Theodore Geisel, Seuss, to her audience. Then, on December 16, 1944, the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes began. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's last desperate gamble, caught the Allies by surprise. The Ghost Army, which had been engaged in deception for Operation Koblenz in the thinly held Ardennes, found itself in the immediate path of the German breakthrough. Corporal John Jarvie witnessed the chaotic retreat of American infantry, a visceral reminder of the thin line between illusion and brutal reality. In the ensuing chaos, the Ghost Army played a crucial role in masking Allied movements and confusing German command. General Patton urgently needed to relieve Bastogne, but disguising the movement of his Third Army was a monumental challenge. This created an opening for Operation Kodak. Beginning on December 22nd with 29 Ghost Army radio sets on the air, they created the illusion of two real divisions, a double exposure designed to divert German attention. This deception significantly contributed to confusing the German command and aiding Patton's breakthrough to relieve the besieged 101st Airborne in Bastogne on December 26. A Ghost Army signalman, Private First Class William Anderson, even helped patch through critical communications between General Bradley and General McAuliffe, the commander in Bastogne. As the German offensive was blunted in January 1945, the Ghost Army continued its missions. However, the unit was placed in increasingly dangerous situations. Their deadliest operation, Operation Bouzonville, on March 12, 1945, saw them transporting replacement troops near Saarlorten. A shattering, smashing, blinding series of explosions from German screaming memes, rockets, resulted in casualties. Sergeant George Peddle's dying words, "Don't bother, I am going to die," were a stark reminder that even a deception unit faced the ultimate cost of war. Private Harold Lehner, an artist from the unit, was critically wounded. Just 2 weeks later, in late March 1945, the Ghost Army would undertake its most ambitious and important mission of the war, Operation Weissen. The Allied High Command planned a major thrust across the Rhine, Germany's western boundary and industrial heartland. To minimize casualties in what was expected to be a bloody crossing, a massive diversion was required. Lieutenant Colonel Merrick Truly architected Operation Weissen. 1,100 Ghost Army men, with supporting infantry, set out to create the illusion of 30,000 soldiers. Over 200 decoy vehicles, including inflatable rubber trucks and tanks, were deployed. 80 dummy anti-aircraft guns supplemented real emplacements. The Sonic Company played sounds of truck convoys and bridge construction. Most critically, Sergeant Stanley Nance's Kilowatt Command radio jeep meticulously imitated real divisions, using a pencil spark test to match transmitter power to the precise signatures of genuine units, simulating troop movements toward a fake attack point. The deception worked. German aerial reconnaissance and radio intelligence were completely misled. A captured German overlay map showed the 79th Division placed correctly, but the 30th Division, the target of the deception, was lost altogether, believed to be elsewhere. On March 24, 1945, the 9th Army's Rhine crossing met weak and disorganized German resistance. Only 31 GIs were killed, a casualty figure comparable to a large training exercise. Operation Weissen was definitive proof of large-scale tactical deception's power, saving an estimated 15,000 to 30,000 American lives. On May 8, 1945, victory in Europe VE Day was declared, but for the Ghost Army, the war's end brought new, and often morally complex, challenges. Assigned to guard displaced persons camps, they confronted the brutal aftermath of the Holocaust and slave labor. Soldiers like Sergeant Bob Tompkins recorded the ethical dilemmas in his diary. They found themselves guarding liberated slaves to protect former enemies, Germans, with whom they were officially still at war. The chaos within the camps was immense, with Russians and Poles hating each other's guts, and violence erupting nightly. Then came the directive for forced repatriation. Ghost Army soldiers were ordered to force Russian refugees onto trains destined for Stalin's regime. Knowing these individuals faced interrogation, imprisonment, or execution for having been captured by the Germans, artist Victor Dowd found himself on patrols to round up Russian DPs who were harassing Germans, a task he found ludicrous. Private Buzz Sennett tragically shot 2 Russian teenagers who had been terrorizing German families, a harrowing incident that deeply affected the unit as the war drew to a close. These experiences, captured in portraits of DPs by artists like Victor Dowd and Ellsworth Kelly, revealed the profound human cost of war beyond direct combat. The Ghost Army, its mission accomplished, returned home. On July 2, 1945, the USS General O.H. Ernst arrived in Norfolk, Virginia. The unit was slated for deactivation, its ashes, as their historian Fred Fox quipped, to be placed in a Ming urn and tossed into the China Sea. But the story of the Ghost Army was far from over, though Messina had published an early account in the Worcester Daily Telegram on August 29, 1944, titled Ghost Army Fools Foe in Neatest Trick of War. The unit's contributions remained largely classified. Subsequent news stories in the New York Times and Newsweek briefly touched upon their exploits. However, the Pentagon swiftly clamped down. Fred Fox, the unit's official historian and an ordained minister, attempted twice, in 1949 and 1967, to have his comprehensive history declassified. He was informed that much of the material is still confidential or secret. Military historian Jonathan Gorn posits that rising Cold War tensions were a primary driver for this prolonged secrecy. The Pentagon, fearing that revealing such effective deception tactics would benefit Soviet adversaries, chose to keep the Ghost Army's story hidden for decades. This meant that for nearly 40 years, the heroism and ingenuity of these men remained unacknowledged. Veterans like Stanley Nance, Al Albrecht, and Jack Macy were bound by a silence that often meant their families never truly understood their wartime service. It was not until the 1980s and 90s, with gradual declassification, that the Ghost Army's story finally emerged from the shadows. An article in the Smithsonian in 1985, illustrated by unit artist Arthur Shilston, began to shed light on their exploits. Decades after the war, these unsung heroes began to receive the recognition they deserved. In September 2013, Ghost Army veteran A.B. Wilson was awarded France's highest decoration, the Legion of Honor. Today, the Ghost Army stands as the only example of a mobile, multimedia tactical deception unit in the history of the United States Army and perhaps in the history of war itself. Their audacious and imaginative tactics challenge the perception that military effectiveness is solely derived from brute force. They demonstrated that unmilitary individuals with creative talents can perform crucial high-stakes military functions. Their story is now taught to new generations of military officers, a testament to the enduring power of ingenuity, illusion, and the hidden heroes who shaped the course of history.